The world awoke on Easter Monday to shocking news from the Vatican. Pope Francis, the 266th leader of the Catholic Church, had died at the age of 88, just 24 hours after appearing before thousands of faithful in St. Peter's Square for Easter Sunday celebrations. The pontiff, who had transformed the papacy with his humility and focus on the marginalized, returned, as Cardinal Farrell announced, to the house of the Father. Today we explore the Pope's final 24 hours, the traditions surrounding a papal death, and how new Pope is chosen. No one could have predicted the sudden turn of events. Just 24 hours before his death, Pope Francis appeared before tens of thousands of Catholics gathered in St. Peter's Square for Easter Sunday Mass. Though visibly frail and in a wheelchair, he blessed the crowds, waving to the faithful as he was driven around the square. Pausing multiple times to bless babies brought to him,
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
Dear brothers and sisters, Happy Easter.
His Easter message, delivered by an aide while he sat watching, called for peace in Gaza and Ukraine, condemning the great thirst for death seen in global conflicts. These would be his final public words to the world.
I express my closeness to the sufferings of the Christians in Palestine and Israel, and to all the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. The growing climate of anti-Semitism throughout the world is worrisome. Yet at the same time, I think of the people of Gaza and its Christian community in particular, where the terrible conflict continues to cause death and destruction, and to create a dramatic and deplorable human and humanitarian situation. I also think in particular of the people of Yemen, who are experiencing one of the world's most serious and prolonged humanitarian crises because of war. And I invite all to find solutions through a constructive dialogue. May the risen Christ grant Ukraine, devastated by war, his Easter gift of peace, and encourage all parties involved to pursue efforts aimed at achieving a just and lasting peace. Happy Easter to everyone.
Just hours later, at 7:35 a.m. local time on Easter Monday, Pope Francis died at the Vatican. The pontiff's health had been declining since February, when he was hospitalized for pneumonia in both lungs, a condition made worse by the partial lung removal he underwent as a young man in Argentina. Despite his struggles, few expected his death so soon after his public Easter appearance. BBC correspondent David Giglioni described witnessing people running towards St. Peter's Square when the news broke, some openly crying in the streets of Rome. Jorge Mario Bergoglio's journey to the papacy was unconventional from the start. Born in Buenos Aires to Italian immigrants fleeing fascism, he worked as a nightclub bouncer and chemical technician before joining the Jesuits. Rising through the ranks, he eventually became the first non-European pope in nearly 1,300 years, the first from the Americas, and the first Jesuit to occupy the throne of St. Peter. The death of a pope triggers a series of carefully choreographed events that have remained largely unchanged for centuries, until Francis. Traditionally, when a pope dies, the Camerlengo, Chamberlain, verifies the death by calling the pope's baptismal name 3 times. When there is no response, the Camerlengo announces, "The pope is truly dead." The pope's fisherman's ring is then destroyed, symbolizing the end of his authority. The body is typically embalmed within 24 hours, and placed on a raised platform called a catafalque in St. Peter's Basilica for public viewing. Traditionally, popes were buried in 3 nested coffins, cypress, lead and oak, each symbolizing different aspects of the papal office. But Francis, consistent with his lifelong simplicity, rewrote these traditions. He approved plans for a less elaborate funeral and burial. Instead of 3 coffins, he chose a simple wooden coffin lined with zinc. He also eliminated the tradition of displaying his body on a catafalque, opting instead to remain inside the coffin with the lid removed for mourners to pay their respects. Perhaps most notably, Francis will be the first pope in over a century to be buried outside the Vatican. Rather than joining his predecessors in the Vatican grottoes beneath St. Peter's Basilica, Francis will be laid to rest in the Basilica of St. Mary Major, one of Rome's 4 major papal basilicas. This choice reflects Francis's deep devotion to Mary and his desire to remain connected to the people of Rome even in death. How new pope is chosen. The process for picking a new pope to lead more than 1 billion Catholics around the world comes down to an ancient voting ritual cloaked in secrecy. It's called conclave, and here's how it works. After a pope dies or resigns, there's a period called sede vacante, roughly time of the empty throne in Latin. As the faithful gather in St. Peter's Square to say goodbye to the previous pope, top-ranking clergymen, known collectively as the College of Cardinals, descend on Vatican City from around the world. They're the ones who get to decide the new pope when conclave begins, usually 2 to 3 weeks after the start of sede vacante. Conclave dates back to the 1200s. 1492 was the first time it was held in the Sistine Chapel, the site of all conclaves since 1878. The cardinals voting under the famous ceilings painted by Michelangelo. The chapel is located just beside St. Peter's Basilica, where the Pope leads the Catholic Church. There's an intense security operation to prepare. The chapel swept for any illicit recording or listening devices before the cardinals arrive. Once inside, they must all swear an oath of secrecy. Any leaks risk excommunication from the church. And this is where conclave gets its name. It comes from the Latin for with a key, referring to a locked room. The cardinals are locked behind the doors of the chapel with no contact with the outside world. They can only leave the chapel at night to sleep at their Vatican accommodation before it all starts again each morning. For centuries, the church's new leader has been chosen from the pool of cardinals, and there's usually a few rumored favorites going into conclave. The cardinals can vote for whoever they want, as long as they're a baptized Catholic man. And here are the rules. Only cardinals under the age of 80 are allowed to participate in the vote. The cardinals vote once on the first day. On following days, there are 4 rounds of voting each, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, until a new pope is chosen by a 2/3 majority. It took just 5 rounds to elect Pope Francis, Pope Benedict even shorter with just 4 rounds, and Pope John Paul II was elected in 2 days after 8 rounds of voting. The ballot papers are anonymous and look something like this. Small rectangles that say in Latin, "I elect as Supreme Pontiff," with a spot for a name to be written in. The cardinals put their ballots in an urn, the votes are counted and read aloud. Then this comes in, after a count, the ballots are burned in a stove connected to a chimney on the roof of the chapel. Those famous smoke signals are the world's only way of knowing what happened. Black smoke means no new pope yet. The voting and the uncertainty for Catholics continues. But if there's white smoke, Catholics in St. Peter's Square and around the world celebrate as a new pope has been chosen. This was the joyful reaction to the election of Pope Francis in 2013.
We are so happy and so enjoyed that we are here now.
It usually takes less than an hour after the white smoke before this announcement.
Habemus Papa.